had days I could hardly speak or lift a finger. I mean, it was clear I was dying, but they didn't know from what, and they didn't know how to treat it. And so he looked at me and he said, "You need to accept you're most likely not going to live past your teenage years."
You're listening to the Digest This podcast, and I'm your host, Bethany Cameron. If you suffer with chronic pain, gut issues, infertility, anxiety, PTSD, feel stress, or have hormonal issues, basically, if you are a human being, today's episode is helping you access the ability to overcome many of these issues. I have Ashleigh Di Lello here with me today to talk about how we can change the brain to heal our physical body. We all know mental health is vital for our overall well-being, and in many cases, how we think and process things affects how we can heal and if we can heal from even years of chronic issues. This is such an empowering episode as Ashleigh shares her story of how she almost died and overcame even when doctors told her she was for sure going to die. Man, this episode is an interview you'll want to save. I bet you didn't know that magnesium is needed to detox heavy metals. It helps the body alkalize during detoxing, which counteracts the acidity that can occur as toxins are released. Magnesium also helps activate enzymes involving detoxification, aids in bile production, and can reduce oxidative stress, which not only hinders proper detoxification, but oxidative stress has been shown to be the root cause of countless other illnesses. So if you can get that under control, then you may get to the root cause of many health issues instead of just putting a Band-Aid on them. Sadly, most magnesium supplements only contain 2 to 3 versions, but Bioptimizers contains all 7 forms, conveniently all in one easy-to-swallow capsule. Bioptimizer's magnesium breakthrough is soy-free, gluten-free, vegan, and the best part is that Bioptimizers has a 365-day money-back guarantee. That's an entire year. You can try this product, and if you're not satisfied, you'll get your money back. So if you want to try this all-natural, full-spectrum magnesium supplement with an entire year at no risk and experience better sleep, better bowel movements, and overall better well-being, go to bioptimizers.com/digest for an exclusive offer and use promo code DIGEST at checkout to save 15%. Ashleigh Di Lello, you are back for a second time, and you first came on when I first started my podcast. So it's been a few years. And I wanted to bring you back because we're friends on Instagram, and I also feel like we are friends in real life, even though you are far away. But I want you to share your story again for those that have joined the Digest This community after you came on, because it's very important. And I really think every single person listening can benefit from neuroplasticity if you are dealing with pain, a chronic illness, autoimmune disease, etc. But first, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, I'm so happy to be here, Bethany. I do feel like we're friends.
We
In a
are.
way that is the beautiful part of social media, right? There's
Yeah.
definitely the bad, but there
The
is
one part. No, I'm just kidding.
there's a few, right? That we have to remind ourselves of. But yes, so I am a brain coach. I created a process based in neuroscience called bio-emotional healing that rewires the nervous system out of physical, mental, or emotional stress, right? None of us started this life with most of us, I should say, didn't start this life with chronic pain or chronic illnesses or anxiety or autoimmune issues or depression, but we went through life and our life experiences all accumulated and compounded to create alterations in our nervous system, right? Which is really the communication that happens between our brain and our body. And there's a data bank of history there, not just of a physical impact, but an emotional and mental impact of life and everything that we've gone through. And that impact then alters our brain and nervous system into a stress response. And that stress response manifests different for each of us. And I'm not discounting that things happen to us physically, that then now we find ourselves in chronic pain or an autoimmune issue, but also then the impact of being sick or in pain for that long of a time also alters the nervous system because it's hell. It's so hard. It impacts every day of your life. So then we have this underlying impact that is constantly kind of running this stress response that is a hypervigilance, overprotection, monitoring of our body, of our environment, of our relationships. And that's a big missing root piece why, notwithstanding all of our efforts, people can't heal fully, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And that's where I found myself. And I know we'll dive into my story. I've gone through two life altering health experiences. I fought my way through the first one, and the second one, no matter what I did, I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse. And that's when desperation met determination. And I dove into neuroscience and created this process first to save my own life. And then in doing so, knew that this was what I was supposed to do and help other people address this complex piece and heal that, which then further just really allows our brain and body to do what they're designed to do, which is to heal. And that's what I've been doing for 7 years now.
Wow. Well, I definitely want to get into your story because you have two very interesting stories. And for those that don't even know, so Ashleigh, she was on Dancing with the Stars. You've been on So You Think You Can Dance. Like you made it to like big time TV. So you are a dancer. I still see you and your husband dance and all that kind of fun stuff. But I have, before we even get into the weeds, I have 5 rapid fire yes or no questions. So I want to ask those. So you can only answer yes or no. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. First question. Can our nervous system be the root cause of chronic pain and autoimmune disease?
Yes.
Can you heal solely through shifting your mindset?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, next
Sorry.
question. Next question. Can you heal solely without addressing the mental aspect?
You can't heal fully. No.
Mhm. Does the way we talk to ourselves impact our physical health?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, last question. Do you think conventional doctors suppress the ability of the mind and how powerful it is to heal the physical?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and I think this is just completely overlooked, is that how our mind truly can affect how we physically feel. I think I shared last time that I went through in 2021 for a month. I was in bed, like I was bedridden, and I was like had a walker at one point because my nervous system was so in shock that I was getting like this tingling feeling all over my body, like electricity was like shocking me. And I did all the tests, I did all the scans and all of that. And they were like, you're fine, like your nervous system. And they told me at the very end, this was like a month long of just tests. And the doctor was finally like, Bethany, I think you're just stressed. And I was like, this cannot be stress. I physically am in pain. So to that point is it can. So I want you to share how we can, I don't want to say manipulate the pain, but how we can overcome that by the way we think.
Hmm. First of all, it's a total paradigm shift from really what we've been told or what we've understood. Meaning, if you feel something in the body, then it has to be something wrong in the body, right? There has to be something to point to, a breakdown, a virus, right? An injury. And I'm not discounting that that does happen, right? I do believe sometimes in my line of work, people swing the pendulum too far and say all physical issues are an emotional issue. We still have physical bodies that get sick, that get breakdown, get injured. So let me just first say that, because I know that can make us feel also up in arms because you're like, wait, no,
Right.
I
Like
got
I can't,
cheated.
yeah, I
Yeah,
can't heal
yeah,
my broken bone by just
right.
thinking, yeah.
Right. Or I got a viral infection. I got cancer. Oh, I got a gut like bacteria. You're right.
Mhm.
Those things still exist. So let me just say that so that nobody starts to feel like I'm saying you are the origin, right, of all of this. And that's really important. But the paradigm shift is that yes, those physical things exist, but we're realizing more and more with studies and neuroscience studies that they're only one piece of the equation. And sometimes, depending on the person and their mental and emotional state, and maybe the stresses, challenges, traumas they've gone through or are going through, those can be the stronger piece that is driving and perpetuating the physical pain and challenges or putting up roadblocks from your body being able to heal. Even though you've got everything else in line, all the treatments, the supplements, the diet, nutrition, like all of that's perfect. You should be well, but you've got this roadblock happening from your brain and nervous system. So the paradigm shift is first understanding that we have to see the body through this biopsychosocial lens, meaning looking at the whole person, right? Well, everything that's going on in your life. And first understand that pain and symptoms really are also connected to alarm bells in our nervous system. But how else does our brain and body get our attention that, hey, something is wrong physically, but also something's wrong emotionally? Hey, you can't keep operating in this degree of stress and sustain life. We're going to have worse breakdown. So I'm going to start to send some stress signals to get your attention, right? And this is really protection from your brain saying, I need you to look at this. And I know you're not going to slow down and really look at this without me talking and then talking louder. And then do I need to scream to get your attention? Because I'll inevitably do that, right? And this protection can look like exhaustion. And that can be literally for the brain to be like, I need you to slow down. So if you won't, I'll exhaust you or I'll get you sick enough to slow down, right? Pain can be, I need you to sit still and not just go, go, go and keep suppressing and keep running in this high stress that literally is depleting our resources. This protection can also look like anxiety. Hey, I need you to be alert in certain things, but then it just starts to take over your life. So the bottom line is these symptoms in our brain, like mentally, emotionally, or in our body physically, are highly connected to protection, not punishment, right? Because we always see it as there's breakdown. Why does my brain hate me? You know, if you've got anxiety or other mental, emotional challenges, you're like, why does my brain hate me? If physical, and I get this, I've been there. I've both nearly died for 4 years and lived 5 years in debilitating chronic pain. I'm like, my body hates me. It's my greatest enemy, right? Why is it punishing me? Why is it taking my life away from me? When really it was protection, yes, to get me to fix some physical things that were going on, and to get me to look at my nervous system and the impact there and start to unravel those pieces. So if you can first have that paradigm shift, stress signals are communication, not punishment, not just that you're broken or damaged, but also just communication from your brain who wants to protect us physically, mentally, and emotionally, and is trying to communicate that to us.
Yeah, well, Ashley, I would love for you to also, we're going to get into how everyone listening can heal, but
Mhm.
I want you to share your story because I think it's really important to know what happened to you and how you overcame that.
Sure. Yeah, I was barely 13 years old when I was the epitome of health. You know, I was a dancer. I started dancing 5 hours a day when I was 7 years old. It was the love of my life. My nickname was the Energizer Bunny. I literally never ran out of energy and loved not only dance, but I loved life. And literally overnight, I went from loving life, having endless energy, being so strong to fighting for my life. And it really was that sudden. There was really no warning signals other than the day before I started to have some weird pains. But I also danced 5 hours a day. So it was like, oh man, I just must have really been pushing my body or something. I woke up I could hardly move. I had pain in every joint and muscle, high degree temperature, but also freezing. I remember going to my mom's room and like trying to do a basic plie, right? A very basic ballet movement. And I couldn't, not only because of the pain, but I had this type of exhaustion that was so different. And I know you know it, and probably people listening. It's like, no, I'm not just tired, need to sleep. It is like this whole body, like the plug got pulled, right? Like my life force isn't here anymore. And I thought, of course, like I must have some really bad flu, right? Never in my mind did I think, man, I'm deathly sick. Like I just thought this is a horrible flu. So we started doing tests and scans, and no one's figuring it out, and for a good month, like you just shared, it was just like I was poked and prodded and under imaging and every blood test that you could think of, which this was 29 years ago. Okay. So there's
Social media wasn't even there.
no social media, no podcasts, no YouTube, no Google, no internet. Okay. No functional medicine, really. Nothing was streamlined or mainstream. It was Western medicine, or like everything else was kind of voodoo. You did have acupuncture and some other things that were more accepted, but gosh, everything else was really seen through this lens of like hippie, so very different world. Didn't have exposure to this type of information, didn't have Amazon and all these pieces of like being able to access different information and products. So we were going down this route. I come from a medical family, and I'll never forget. After having all these tests and scans, I was at one of the top pediatric hospitals in the nation, and the doctor came in and looked at me and said, we don't know what you have. We can see you have some type of rare viral infection. Your body is shutting down. At that point, I'd lost a lot of my hair. My skin was yellow from my liver shutting down. I had days I could hardly speak or lift a finger. I mean, it was clear I was dying, but they didn't know from what, and they didn't know how to treat it. And so he looked at me and he said, you need to accept you're most likely not going to live past your teenage years.
Oh my gosh. What a horrible thing to say to a young teen.
I know it really, later in life, as I reflected on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, especially 13 years old, you're just so young, and you're there with this expert, and you're already in something so hard that forced me to grow up overnight. I really had to like let go of my being a teenager and embrace becoming this adult that was facing something very few people even go through, right? And he said, he even went further. He said, you're not going to ever dance again, right? You'll never get married, never have children. And the sooner you accept this, the easier it will be to come to terms with your reality.
Ugh. That's setting you up for failure.
Exactly. And, I didn't know anything about the brain that I did know then, right? Neuroscience wasn't even really discussed then. And again, very different world of information. And I remember just sitting there, and I don't know if I've ever felt so many emotions at once, but also shock. And how is this my life, right? How am I here? I was just healthy, not too long ago. And I credit my mom for giving me space, because gosh, as a mother now, I'd want to jump right in there. And my daughter's 11. She's pretty close to where I was at that time. And I remember just trying to grapple with everything that was just laid out in front of me. And I had this deep feeling that I definitely think was given to me from God, that like there was more for my life. And I just knew if I just accepted I was dying, then any chance of survival was gone. So I had nothing else to say other than taking the biggest deep breath of my life. And I looked at the doctor and I said, I don't accept this. And I remember walking out of that hospital with, again, every emotion you can think of, but just with this resolute determination that my body was greater than what I was being told. And the human brain and our spirit and my life, and that we had this capacity, even though I just been told it was impossible. These were my limits. Accept it. Life is over. I came here for 13 years, and it was a long, long journey to when I really started to understand the powerful brain body connection. Um, Again, didn't know the neuroscience, but I had nights I was afraid to go to sleep, afraid if I surrendered that conscious will to live, that my body just wouldn't make it. And just mercifully was hardly holding on. And so I would stay awake and I would will my body to keep fighting. I would will to keep fighting. And this is when I know, because I've experienced, I really feel I had the choice to make a decision to say, I'm tired, I'm done. And we've seen that when family members even can give people like, you can go now, because they're trying to hold on when they're really sick or close to death, and they kind of let go and finally they're able to pass. Or soldiers, when they give up that will to live, they'll go and they'll sit down and they'll die. And these aren't from always physical reasons. They're losing the will to live. And I've experienced what it feels like where your body's so close, and I willed it to keep going. And that was a big part of how I survived this illness where I fought between life and death for 4 years.
Is it because you were afraid you wouldn't wake up the next day that you didn't want to sleep?
Yeah.
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 I was afraid that my body was too sick and it wouldn't make it. Um, and obviously I had evidence of the nights I did sleep and I made it, right? But it very much wired my nervous system into survival. Right? I didn't know that because I was surviving. I was fighting every day, which is a beautiful mechanism. Let me just say that the fight or flight response system gets a bad name because of how much we talk about the nervous system. And it's a beautiful mechanism. It helps save our life. It helps people do amazing things. When every time I got on stage and in front of 10 million people, I was accessing it, right? When we speak passionately, we're activating our nervous system. When we do amazing things for other humans, we're activating that. It's just we don't want to live there. And that's the problem, is we end up living there. And my nervous system got so wired to survive because I fought for my life for 4 years, that even when I survived my illness, which took 6 years for me to get strong enough to go back to dance again, I didn't understand that my nervous system was operating in this fight or flight all the time still. It was in it, and it felt very validated because look, I survived. Like it worked, right? I fought, I won, I defied the odds, and now my nervous system is like, okay, Ashleigh's safety is connected to staying in these survival mechanisms 24/7 because we're not going to get caught off guard again, right?
Mhm. Well,
Because go ahead.
the $1 million question. So how did you overcome it?
Yeah. So after many years and exhausting everything that existed medically, like in the Western medical world at the time, we went to holistic, right? I started homeopathic medicine, like anything, viral homeopathic to help my body support whatever it was fighting, right? We went to supplementation. My diet became life or death to me, right? Which I know very first. It was like, does this food support my immune system or does it take away from my immune system? Right? Is it inflammatory or is it healing? And that was a huge part of giving my body these resources. So I did it through supplementation, I did it through homeopathic remedies, and I did it through the will to live. Like all of those had to work together. And I'm not discounting the huge impact my food had, and homeopathic and supplements. And I know the huge impact my brain had in being able to put all the pieces together, the brain and the body, to be able to overcome something that I was told wasn't possible. And it was a journey. Like I said, it was a 6-year journey before I was healthy enough to go back to dance.
And so are you attributing overcoming that with homeopathic medicine and food, or did you know how to manipulate, or I don't want to say again, manipulate the mind, but did you know how to like switch that flip that switch?
I think it's all of them together, right? My body was so sick. Gosh, if I had just been eating ice cream all day, then I would have been depleting its resources. And that's where I always say we have to treat the brain and the body, right? But at the same time, my will and communicating health to my body was crucial, because the reality is, and I'll share it in this light. I remember one night I went on a drive with my mom. She used to put me in the car, and we just go for drives, because my whole life revolved around hospitals, doctors, and my bed, and I'm a teenager. Like, this is supposed to be fun prime time of your life, and I'm dying. And my friends were great at first, but when you keep staying sick for so long, people don't know what to do, and I get it, and they weren't even mature enough to really handle it, right? But we'd put me in the car, and we live by some local universities, and so my mom, we'd just go drive around campus, and I was so weak, I was actually had to lay my head against the door, because I couldn't hold it upright. And I remember laying against the door, and my mom was driving around the campus, and I was just observing. It was in the fall, I remember, and I was observing just college students walking, talking. I remember seeing them throw a football and just look like they're studying, having fun. And in that moment, I was so terrified, because I realized I no longer remembered what it felt like to feel good.
Mm.
And I remember looking at my mom and saying, how do they do that? Like, how do they have the energy to do that? And I knew I had experienced it, but it had been so long. It was like I couldn't access that feeling, that memory that made it part of me. And in that moment, I remember just thinking, well, if I can't remember that, how is my body ever going to feel that again?
Mm.
And what I didn't know, right, is that there'd been that adaptation to sickness, right? That my survival had allowed me, but I thought, I've got to create it before my body's going to experience it. And that was a big part of me literally communicating, like creating, like this vision of me healthy and strong and energized and doing what I loved again. And that was also my birthright, right? To feel good, and my body was designed to feel good. And so we know that with visualizing and creating, which I really see as a co-creation with God, because he was the creator of our brain. And I, without anybody telling me, without any knowing any of these mechanisms, while I was doing tests or treatments, I would sit there and I would visualize, and I would see myself dancing again. And
Mm.
I would see myself doing it with strength and love. So it wasn't, I was going back and seeing myself dancing and then being sad because I had lost it. It was seeing myself in the future doing it again, and doing it effortlessly, and having strength and muscle again, and feeling that joy and that gratitude. And that's such a huge part of reminding my system, my nervous system, my body, of health, of possibility, because all I knew every day was sickness and weakness and survival. And the brain had adapted to that. I needed to remind it of a different outcome that we could adapt to again. And that was crucial to also reminding myself that my body could work for me again and not just against me, and building that trust again. Because I really do believe that's also a part why people don't stay well, or they get something else, is because when you suffer for so long, it erodes your trust with your body. And now your brain is almost hyper vigilantly monitoring for something to be wrong, because it's like, okay, what's next? I want to be prepared, right? Because that shift from health to sickness is so hard. Now the brain's like, I'm just going to look for it, so we're prepared next time.
I can get bloated after a meal and gas builds up with severe pain if I'm not super careful in what I eat, or heck, even if I eat a super clean meal, but I eat too fast, or when I'm stressed, and emotions alone can cause that feeling of fullness and unbearable stomach pain. So I always have in my arsenal Peak Tea's organic ginger digestion elixir to help de-bloat and soothe my tummy. It's honestly nature's remedy when it comes to digestive upsets. This elixir is a combination of ginger, mint, licorice root, lemon peel, and orange, all designed and proven to help stomach discomfort when we need it the most without any sweeteners, fillers, flavoring agents, and to top it off, Peak Tea triple toxin screens all their teas, ensuring there's no mold, glyphosate, heavy metals, or contaminants. I highly recommend getting their ginger digestion elixir to keep on hand and use code DIGEST at checkout to receive a discount while you're at it. Head on over to peaklife.com/digest and use code DIGEST at checkout to receive a discount on all their organic teas, including their ginger digestion elixir. I have a question for you all. What's antibacterial, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, contains antioxidants, improves oral health and digestive support, and contributes to wound healing? If you guessed Manuka honey, then you're absolutely right. Every time I talk about Manukora honey from New Zealand on my Instagram, I always get messages from my followers telling me how much they appreciate me introducing this ancient healing honey to them and their family. A little goes a long way, and this honey should be saved for medicinal purposes, not baking into cakes or cookies. It's something I always have in my pantry because it never spoils, ever. And a tiny teaspoon daily is all you need to get the endless benefits both internally and if you apply it externally on your face for breakouts or even burns, its potent healing powers work wonders. Manukora honey contains 3 times more antioxidants than your typical sweetener and the special antibacterial compound called MGO. The higher the MGO count, the more of these antibacterial compounds exist in the honey. It's hard to find Manuka honey with an MGO above 500, but Manukora guarantees an MGO of at least 850. Now it's easier than ever to get Manukora honey. Just head on over to manukora.com/digest to save $70 on their starter kit, which comes with an 850 plus MGO Manukora honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. That's manukora.com/digest to save $70 plus $25 worth of free gifts. That's manukora.com/digest. Well, and I think too, giving that example of kind of going into it knowing you're going to fail is, I feel like everyone has had food poisoning or some sort of upset, right? And whatever food you got poisoned from, you never want to eat again. And you physically, like, even when you start to eat it, either you're scared to eat it again or you like physically get sick again, not because it's poisoned, but because you remember the last time you ate it and it wasn't good.
Yep. Oh, I love that you brought that up. I talk about that with my clients. The brain has a one trial learning for something negative, meaning one experience will alter it. One negative experience will alter it. That's not true to positive, unfortunately. So if you think about this is how I demonstrate that is it is with food poisoning. And I share my own experience. One Christmas Eve, we went out to breakfast and I had scrambled eggs and I got horrible food poisoning. Horrible. So I was so sick on Christmas Eve and Christmas, right? So it mattered a lot even more to me than if it was just like some random weekend, right? So you have to think of the combination. The brain now is saying eggs are dangerous because look at what they did to you. And now the threat response is even greater because it was around a holiday where family was around and I was isolated in the bathroom, right? So now that threat response went even greater. So now my brain is like, eggs are bad. We cannot eat eggs. The thought of eggs, I'm going to make sure you don't eat them again. So even the thought of them, I'm going to send some sickness. I'm going to send some gurgling in your stomach or some nausea, right? Because I want to protect you from that happening again. If I don't do anything with that, I might not eat eggs the rest of my life because my brain is driving the meaning around the eggs based on that one experience. So what I had to do is say, okay, that's true. That was really awful. And in that one moment, my brain changed its perception of eggs for me. But let's look back. How many times did I eat eggs and I was totally fine?
Exactly.
Right? How many times? Oh, most of my life. So I can't have this one experience alter that. But I had to consciously remind my brain of the safety of eggs for me and point it to evidence of that. Similarly, when I was sick, now it was my body is broken, my body is damaged, my body is sick. This is my life now. And I had to go look at, even if it was 12 years, look at how healthy I was. Look at the energy I had. Look at the vitality I had. That is proof that my body can do that and it can do it again. And that was part of my creation, was shifting that threat response my brain now had around my body, to reminding it that not to just see through this lens of this is who I am now because it's been going on for so long, but this is who I was and this is who I can be again. And the body was designed to heal, but I had to remind it of that, not just in what I was doing to it physically, but very, very much mentally and
Yeah.
emotionally.
Does talking about your illness constantly actually make matters worse, right? If you're diagnosed with something and you're like, oh, I have this, does it make actually the diagnosis worse?
Yeah, that is a slippery slope, right? Because we want answers. Of course, we want answers. And a lot of that is directed so we know how to treat it, right? But the problem is, and a lot of studies have shown, once we have specific answers, we now start attaching our identity to it. And one of the strongest mechanisms in the brain is to hold us in alignment with who we say we are. So when we continue to declare and speak this diagnosis or these symptoms, or I have this, or my gut is broken, or my body is always sick, or my immune system doesn't work. Like, I'm not saying there aren't moments of acknowledging what we're experiencing, but when we continue to speak the limitations of our body, we're directing our brain to hold us in alignment with that. So, for example, too, my second journey, I lost the ability to walk. I lived in debilitating chronic pain, was diagnosed with over 5 different chronic pain conditions, right? This is your life now. The best you can do is
Mhm.
manage it. It's
And this
down.
is the second time this happened.
Second time. So I'm in my 30s.
Okay.
Okay. So we just kind of jumped ahead, but I want to talk about this. So I had an amazing professional career, had my daughter, she was 2. I had to have a second hip surgery because dancing, we did Broadway 10 shows a week. It's hard on the body. There's breakdown. My first surgery was successful. 8 months later, I was back in my career. My second surgery failed. So that was the catalyst that started my chronic pain journey. Something did go wrong. They did mess up the surgery, but my body reacted so violently, um, in large part because of what I'd already gone through. And that those survival mechanisms very much embedded in my body. So when that went wrong, someone else's bodies definitely would have been impacted. There's no doubt about it. They left a hole in my hip capsule. The structural integrity of my body was off. They couldn't see that hole in MRI imaging. That's why it took a very long time to even know it was there. So anyone's body would have reacted. But I know now, mine went to a whole other level because it was like with every pain and that lack of structural integrity, my brain was like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Here we go again. Okay, I've done this before. I'm going to do it again. Those survival instincts went on overdrive, which meant more pain, more breakdown, right? More stress signals of not trusting my body, more fear, right? More protection, which was pain for me, right? So I know I had a train of thought in connection to what we were talking about, and then I kind of lost it when I was talking about it. What were we talking
It's
about?
gonna come back. I promise.
Um,
Have you heard of the I know you've heard of like placebo, nocebo, but the milkshake study? Have you
yes,
heard of that?
yes, I love it. But go ahead, share it.
No, why don't you share it with with
Well,
my listeners.
there's a few different ones out there, so hopefully we have
Okay.
one. But I'm assuming you mean it in terms of how the ingredients that they spoke about.
I was thinking of the one that they gave two groups a milkshake, told one group it was low calorie, told the
Yes.
other one it was high calorie.
Yeah. Yeah. One, it was low calorie and like good ingredients, right? The others high calorie, therefore also inherently not the best ingredients, right? And the people told they had the low calorie were started to get hungry earlier, right? Hungrier, wanting more food, but also feeling good about what they ate because it was healthier, right? The other group, fuller, longer, kind of lethargic, like felt just a whole different reaction when in reality it was the exact same milkshake.
And it was like in between, right? It wasn't low calorie, it wasn't high, it was kind of
Right.
like middle ground.
Right in middle chain. So the whole reaction was perception based upon what they were told. So that's what I was going to say. We were talking about the attachment of the diagnosis or symptoms. I was told over and over again, you're a chronic pain patient now. You're a chronic pain patient now. You have myalgia, you have chronic regional pain syndrome, you have interstitial cystitis. Like you have this is who you are. And what I had to separate, because first I was like, I am not. I am not. I refuse. That didn't work because my reality every day was saying, you're in chronic pain. Like you're in pain all the time. So I had to separate, go, okay, I am in pain right now, but I refuse to accept that the rest of my life is going to look exactly like this. And that was the differentiation. So I'm like, I'm experiencing chronic pain. That was different than me saying, I'm a chronic pain patient. Very subtle, but significant, right? Like my body is experiencing this versus I am.
Right. And I think that's why we shouldn't label ourselves or identify with a diagnosis.
100%. They've shown studies with back pain even. Once people even get an MRI and they're told, oh, you have a bulging disc or you have stenosis, their pain actually gets worse. Because now the brain is like, oh, I need to protect that. And then we start speaking about it. And where we might move a little bit more fluidly and trust now for like, oh my gosh, that's not safe. I shouldn't do that. And I'm not discounting the need to know sometimes and fix things, but we have to be very mindful of how much we attach to it and the emotion and fear connected to it. Because the more we do that, the more the brain will send protective signals, which comes out in pain or other symptomology. So this is my experience versus this is who I am is a really important distinguishment in how we speak about what we're experiencing.
And the second time that this happened, how long did it take you to flip that switch?
So I, of course, threw everything in the kitchen sink at it because and I did know the mind aspect, but it wasn't working. What I knew at the time, right? I was getting worse and worse, just like they were saying, and I had over 200 injections. I mean, stem cell, PRP, regenerate. You mean, it exists. I did Western, Eastern, alternative, holistic, regenerative.
Yeah.
I mean, we like bankrupted our family, nearly lost our home because you're doing anything because greatest wealth is health and life. Nothing really else matters. And I'm not saying your family doesn't matter, but you can't even be with your family when your health is suffering so greatly. So literally, I got to my greatest desperation. And earlier that day, I talked to my husband and I said that there's nothing left to try. Like we've tried everything. And I remember that night, it was again, 2 a.m. I was on my bedroom floor just trying to get through one painful moment to the next. I mean, I was sleeping maybe 2 to 3 hours a night because of the pain, and I didn't want to be downing heavy narcotics every single night. With that being said, I even some nights got desperate and would take an Oxycontin I had left from surgery, and it didn't even do anything. I mean, that's the level of nerve pain I was experiencing. And I remember thinking, what if I just accept what they're telling me? What if this is my life now, this is who I am, because I am so exhausted. My family is so exhausted, not just from what I'm going through, but the relentless pursuit to try to find answers and spending all our money and nothing's working. And I remember as I laid there and I was honest with accepting that, like I'm saying, this is what I'm just going to accept is the rest of my life. This is the rest of my family's life. And that part of me that was there at 13 just got this whole new energy that I thought I really had nothing left. I felt depleted to my core. And it actually scared me because I had refused to die for 4 years. And now I had been so pushed to the place of giving up, fighting, giving up, looking for answers. And that moved me to action. And I thought, if I can't find the answer outside of me, I'm going to figure it out. They said my nervous system flipped a switch into pain. So I'm going to figure out how to flip it back. And that very next day, my whole life revolved around studying neuroscience and figuring out how the nervous system gets altered. And for me, of course, that involved a lot of pain science, but the alteration is the same. It just looks different. And looking at my whole life and all the pieces that contributed to the breakdown and dysfunction and alarm signals that was happening with me today, and merging all the science with the lived experience is how I created bioemotional healing. And I was my first guinea pig. And as I started to see those tremendous shifts within myself, then of course, like I said, I knew that's what I wanted to help with others. So the process as I was creating it, obviously it took me some time, and not in the same way my clients now have the process, right? I was trying this and oh, that's my system's not ready for that. So it took a few years, but with that was progression. And that's where I'm like, no, this is working. Because that's what we seek, right? Is not just, I want to get well, but I want to feel like I'm on the journey to getting well. Like, because the worst
You
part
need a
is,
little hope. Yeah.
yeah, a little hope of like, okay, things are shifting versus I'm staying stuck or I'm getting worse.
Mhm.
Right. So as I started to feel these progressions and shifts in my pain and the reactivity or how severe or how long, and my own PTSD around my body, because that's one thing I realized I hadn't been carrying. I had
Mhm.
been carrying for over 2 decades, right? Was this pretty deep trauma and lack of trust around my body. And it was pretty warranted, right? But I didn't
Mhm.
understand the level of depth that I had, because when I survived, I was like, time to live. I didn't really want to look at those aspects. And so as I started to look at the physical, the emotional, the mental, all the ways in which life and my prior experiences were impacting my present experiences, and I eventually found one of two surgeons in the world that could fix the hole in the hip, like, because I did
Mm.
need to correct the structural integrity of
Yeah.
my body. But at that point, I had pain in 10, 12 areas of my body that the hip alone wouldn't have fixed, right? It would have done a huge piece, but that had just messed up so much of my body for all those years. And all these pieces again coming together, I couldn't fight my way well the second time. I had to heal my nervous system. And then
Mm.
that is what allowed me to heal and stay healed and feel my greatest health internally and physically, that I feel like I've ever had.
Oh, Ashley, you have such an amazing story, two amazing stories, and your whole life is a story. And I do believe that God allowed you. I hate to say that, but I know that sometimes God allows certain things to happen for a greater purpose, um, to sh- to shape us, right? Not just for you, for your own personality and grit, but to help others. And I'm not thankful that you had to go through that, but I am thankful that you are using it to now help others. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. And I think for those listening, they're probably wondering, okay, I am in a stressed state. My body's in flight and fight for like years. I can't get out of it. What would be the first thing that you would address if, say, a client came to you and they had some PTSD and it's affecting their physical body?
Yeah. Um, First thing, right, is again saying, okay, let's treat you the person, not just your brain or your body. Let's treat you the person. So let's make a list of the stressful things that you're going on now, but also the things you've gone on in the past. Like let's just get a whole picture of you as the individual. what are you stressed about now, but what are also some of the things that come up from your past, like your triggers, right? Triggers are always pointing to where we still need healing, right? Those are still pointing to where we have unresolved emotions and thoughts, and those are part of what are driving also our nervous system stress. So it's not just today, right? It's just looking at the whole pieces and saying, let's look at your life as a whole versus this one moment, because so many studies now show, why is autoimmune way more prevalent amongst women and chronic pain conditions? Well, yes, I do know hormones are an impact because us women go through a lot of changes in our life. But so many studies now show these are the predominant majority are women who have undergone mental, emotional, physical stress trauma in their life. And the body holds on to that impact, right? And we survive, but those survival mechanisms create an impact. So one of the first things we do is let's just look at everything that's happening, because we're aware of the symptom, right? We're like, my body's doing this, I feel this. We're aware of the mental symptom too. I'm feeling anxious, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm super stressed. We can see all that. Let's look at underneath that. Let's look at the different pieces of you that are contributing. What's going now? What's going on in your life with your marriage, family, work? Let's look at what's happened in the past that you still kind of think about and comes up. And let's just start to get that down on paper. And let's start to look at the belief systems around them. Right? So even if we talk about these traumas or these physical or mental stress that women go through, or men, of course, everyone does. What happens from those is we extract belief systems from them. My body's broken, right? I used to always say that. I'm like, God fell asleep in my creation and I got, my wires didn't get all connected, right? I used to say that. That's not a very good belief system. That is literally saying my body doesn't work like anybody else's, and therefore I'm putting barriers around it from being able to again. Or I'm not good enough, or nobody loves me, or I'll never be able to accomplish what I want. So it's not just what happened, but then let's look at the belief systems we extracted from it that now are telling our brain and body who we are and what we can do, because those now become the bodyguards around our healing, the bodyguards around our reality. And the hard part is beliefs are always validated. The brain's like, of course I believe this. Remember this, remember this, remember this. And that's why the brain anchors them in so strong. They've come from real experiences. And we have to say, yep, that's true. And do I want it to always be true? What do I want to be true? What is the belief I could shift that now opens up possibility? And this is obviously, we're still surface level, but this type of awareness doesn't usually happen because we're too caught up in the reaction to the symptoms.
And to our, most likely our past symptom. If it's okay, I want to share a couple of examples. It's so funny. Yesterday, I was talking with one of my friends, and she's actually an older girl, but I'm friends with all ages. And she said that she had a really bad relationship in the past that just burned her, and she could not trust anyone. And she's currently in a 4-year relationship now, but she said, I couldn't trust this guy. He's a great guy, but he didn't do anything wrong to make me not trust him, right? Perfect guy, but I just couldn't trust him. And finally, she had to get over that because of her past relationship. And I also have another friend. She got diagnosed with a severe cancer, stage 4, went through chemo. Like literally, people were wondering if she was going to die. Like it was bad. This was like in 2017, something like that. Maybe it was earlier. Anyways, she's good now, right? She survived. Not only did she survive, but she got married. But they told her, because of the chemo, you'll never be able to have kids. Like your eggs are fried. You're not giving birth. Well, shortly after she got married, she had her first daughter, and she's pregnant now with her third. But it was like, who are you to tell me? Because if she was probably living in that state of like, oh, I can't have kids, and maybe she was thinking that. I don't know. But sometimes even I've heard of other people, they say, oh, you're infertile, you're struggling with infertility, just adopt or something. And of course they adopt, and then the stress is released, and they also have a kid, they conceive,
Yep.
and that kind of a thing. So it's like,
Yes. 100%, right? That's why we've heard this phrase, whether you believe you can or can't, you're right.
Mhm.
And that sounds just like one of those feel-good phrases, but it is the reality in how the brain works. The brain is constantly communicating to the body, to our life, what's possible or what isn't. And yes, there are very real limitations and things that we face, but we also very often decide whether they're final or not by how strongly we attach to them. And if you don't mind, can I share one study that I think is one of the most powerful studies that we all can really embody and embrace for ourselves? Because we all have been told limitations in one way or the other, right? All of us. And again, they're validated by things we've experienced. So I love this study. They discovered a genetic mutation that allows people to better offload carbon dioxide and uptake oxygen. So you have a better VO2 max capacity, right? So I hope they do a study one day and just look at long endurance athletes and see how many of them might have this genetic mutation, right? Because they just have this better oxygen capacity, right? And I know we all can get better at it, but they were running these VO2 max studies and bringing people in and testing them. So they tested people, they divided them into two groups. They told the first group, hey, congrats, you've got the genetic mutation. You're probably going to do really well with these VO2 max tests, right? Second group, you don't have it. It might be more of a struggle. They run the tests. You can imagine which group did better. The first one. And that makes sense. People were told, right? You've got it. You're going to do well. We know all about the placebo effect. We told this group, you're not going to do as well. Okay, then they're not going to do as well, probably, because that's what they're believing, right? But here's where the study really matters. Is the truth was there was a mix of people in both groups.
Mhm.
And when they further looked at the physiology of each person, they found that the people who didn't have the genetic mutation, but were told they did, outperformed the people with the genetic advantage, but were told that they didn't.
What?
Which means beliefs plus expectations are even more powerful than genes.
That's amazing. That's so encouraging, because I want this podcast and this interview to encourage those listening that you aren't limited. I'm just going to shoot out one more study, and I wish I even have the reference. But have you heard of the peanut butter study where this guy was supposed to be allergic to peanut butter?
I don't know if I have actually.
Okay, real quick. So they told him, you're allergic to peanut butter. Like, it's valid, right? A lot of people are allergic to peanuts. I'm not saying that this is the case for everyone allergic to peanuts, right? But for the study, so they told the guy, you're allergic to peanuts. And so he ate some peanut butter and he had a reaction, whole body, skin breakout, like the whole thing. Well, then they gave him some food, didn't tell them there was peanut butter in it, right? But there was peanut butter in it, but you couldn't tell. No reaction, no breakout. Like it was, and so he was thinking, oh, I'm allergic to peanut butter. I'm allergic to this. I'm going to break out. And he did.
Yep. And the brain was therefore like, I need to protect you. Let me send hives. Let me send, difficulty breathing, whatever I do so that you don't do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not discounting either, right? I've eaten very restrictive and in certain ways at certain times, but I've also worked with a lot of clients at once the body's been treated, like shifting the brain's perception of foods, of chemical sensitivities, because now if it's gone on long enough and you've addressed a lot of the physical, it's a brain issue where the brain is like, I can't go there. I can't walk into Target because there's too many chemicals and smells. I can't be on grass. And a lot of times the impact on the brain is a big part of the perpetuation where the body's like, I'm actually good now. And again, I'm not discounting these things, right?
Right.
That are in reality, but a lot of the problems that become chronic, meaning continual, notwithstanding what you've done to treat the body, is because a lot of the root cause is now in the brain and in its threat response to life, other people, chemicals, food. The brain is now the driver versus the body itself. And that's such a big piece of my work. And I will say with that study that beliefs and expectations are more powerful than genes, that's so huge. And a lot of my clients have to do a lot of deconstructing and unlearning to even get to the place where their brain can believe something better. Because otherwise, when they try, the brain will just fight them, right? So if people have tried that and they're like, I've tried to visualize, I've tried to believe, it's because there's these other mechanisms that still needed to be unlearned and processed that then free up your brain to be receptive to a higher belief and expectation. And that's a big part of bioemotional healing because has to be a progressive process with the brain based on what you've gone through. And I had to do that. I remember even just in my chronic pain journey, trying to tell my brain, we can heal. We can heal. And it was like, Ashley, excuse me, do you remember when we died for 4 years? And like, here we are again. Like, I'm not gonna go to that false belief again because here we are again. And there was a lot I had to process to get my brain to really be receptive again of thinking I could defy the odds for the second time. And you would think that in one way, I had a firmer belief because I'd already lived it. But in the other way, my brain battened down even harder because it was like round two, right? So I don't want to get false expectations again and wait for round three and round four to come. And that's where I had to heal the nervous system so I could finally break this cycle in my body and fully heal inside and out.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you, a few minutes ago, you had said the word triggered. And I think that's very important as to what triggers you to go in such a response. And I've said this before on my Instagram. I said, if you're triggered by something, that means you're dealing with it, right? Because I'm not triggered. If I see someone, I'm just going to give an example. If I see someone drinking alcohol, I'm not triggered because I've never dealt with alcoholism, right? But so many people can be triggered because someone else is drinking alcohol. That means that they currently, or maybe in the past, have dealt with that struggle, right? Or you see someone, I don't even know, but you see something, oh, you're triggered by that. They're not doing anything wrong. It's really you because you're currently dealing with it. So I want to ask the listeners, what are you triggered by? Like when you see something, what triggers you? And then ask yourself, well, why? Am I dealing with that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I always use the word to my clients, like, just get curious because our instinct is to react and then look external, right? Because it could be something you see or something someone said to you, and you feel this huge like reaction in yourself. And we often have stimulus and response glued together, right? You see something, you hear something, and you respond immediately, and it's a reactivity and it's a stress response. Let's get curious and go inside and create some space of asking why. Not just this moment, but why? What is it reminding me of? What is it connected to? What did I see? What did they say? That is it about this person or is it about my ex? Is it about my parent? Is it about like that coach? Is it about, oh, that experience that is now being triggered by this experience? Because your brain, your limbic system, which holds those emotional memories and stresses, doesn't have a time clock. It really doesn't decipher past from present. So your triggers are also happening because your limbic system in your brain is cross-referencing that in a nanosecond to something from your history that was similar. and then it sends alarm bells. And that happens so fast that we will continue to stay in a reactive state. We'll continue to be triggered unless we get curious and start looking inside and asking, why is this so bothersome to me? Why am I so stressed? And we don't do it from a judgment place. We do it from this compassionate, curious
Mhm.
place, because it is showing where we still need to heal. And unfortunately, we've been living in a society where it's all of our jobs not to trigger each other, which prevents us from living, speaking,
Right. We're
doing
suppressed. We don't want to
anything.
say anything. Yeah.
Right. Versus, hey, this is an invitation to look inside and actually an opportunity to heal some stuff that you're still holding on to so you can get more free and
Mhm.
not live your life trying to not be triggered all the time.
Yeah, that makes total sense. With bioemotional healing, do you is it all telehealth? Do you do in person?
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about the internet is thankfully it allows me to have clients all over the world. Right. So we use Zoom. Zoom, we love Zoom. So the process of bioemotional healing, which is really the key, all based in neuroscience, has all the studies, all the research. That's what really accesses the mechanisms that are the same for each of us. That process is in an online portal that my clients walk through week by week. It has all the knowledge and it has the step by step implementation, because that's the key. There's no shortage of information today, but what's the actual implementation of changing this? Because knowledge isn't power unless it's used. And we can learn, 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 and the brain doesn't change without new input, new experiences. So the process is the key. And then as my clients move through that, I'm coaching them weekly. And I have had some local clients and they'll come in person, but predominantly it's on Zoom.
Okay. And so if people wanted to access what you are offering, where do they go and where can they find you?
Yeah, the best place is my website, which is my name. I'm sure you'll link it. There's
I
nothing
will.
about it. AshleighDiLello.com. If you search bio emotional healing, it will also come up. On my website, I really want to encourage people. I just recorded a new training on the brain that I think will give you so much insight that I just want to encourage you. It's totally free. But it's 4 things that I really wish everyone understood, and it will give you a lot of understanding about yourself. So that training is there. I have a free brain body blueprint that is a 4-step plan to start disrupting your stress responses. So again, an implementation. And if you're someone who's like, I want to get off this stress cycle. I've been doing this for so long. I want to heal my mental, emotional, physical health, whatever that is for you, then you can schedule a consultation where we dive in more to you. This is very hands on, in depth work. So this call is there to make sure we're a good fit, right, for both of us. And then if so, then we move forward as a client. And I've just seen people break free from all types of physical, mental, and emotional stress that they've even had for decades. My oldest client to date was 84, and her neural pathways were pretty well established. But the beautiful thing about the brain is it's plastic, it can change until the day we die. And that's true to all of us. And that's why I love the brain so much, because it really is the greatest equalizer of our potential to overcome and heal when we know how to truly harness it.
Yeah, I love that you even shared that you have a very older client. And even in the older ages, we're pretty set in our ways, but it could still change.
It can still change when you're willing and you put in the effort and you know the how. We're not broken or damaged just because of what we've gone through. And we
What
can
is
change that.
Well, what is the typical time period for someone to heal? And I know that's kind of a blanket question because everyone deals differently and heals
Yep.
faster, slower. They have more baggage than others.
Right. Yeah. You have all those factors: age, how long it's been there, but also the depth of impact, right? How many impact, how many physical, mental, emotional challenges, like all that matters. Personality comes into play. Perfectionist, we have to do a lot of healing there. A recovering one right here.
Type A personality. Yes, me
type
too.
A. That's pretty common amongst my clients because it creates a lot of stress, right? So anyhow, all that comes into play. The process of bioemotional healing is 12 weeks. And I have seen people get pain-free. I've seen people get off anxiety medication, depression. I've seen people get 100%. I've seen people get 30%. I've seen people get all in between. But the beautiful thing is we're changing the nervous system. So now it's operating differently, which means the changes keep happening. So some of those clients who are so severe that maybe we're at 30%, they'll call me 6 months later and be like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you where I'm at. And because bioemotional healing is a process that I give my clients access to forever, because I want them to have all the knowledge, tools, and capacity that I have. They now have that to continue practicing and implementing so the changes keep happening. And so I've had clients who were bedridden, and in 12 weeks, they healed their relationship with their body. They moved through that impact. They had trust again. They had let go of a lot of trauma. And then their physical health came the 4 or 5 months after, right? Because the internal switch had to change first. So I'm always like, I'm not God. I wish I knew exactly what it would look like, but I do know in those 12 weeks, we can shift the nervous system out of those survival mechanisms that are driving a lot of the breakdown.
Yeah, well, 12 weeks is like nothing for someone
No.
who's been dealing with chronic, pain or trauma. So I think that's pretty quick, even just to see any improvement. And who knows what you'll experience. Man, Ashleigh, I just can't thank you enough for just being so brave and courageous to do this and to look into something and to share your story and to now be helping others. I'm truly grateful. You've become a wonderful friend. And so for those listening, I'll put Ashleigh's links where you can find her in today's show notes. So you can just go there and find her with one easy tap.
Thanks, Bethany. I mean, you do the same. And I want to thank you, right? All of us are trying to turn our pain into purpose, right? And that does make the pain more worthwhile of having gone through from even a bigger, just individual perspective. And I just am so grateful every day to be where I am now. And I'm honored to help people expedite that journey for them because I know how hard it is. And I also know how amazing it is to get to the other side.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you said, the body knows how to heal. We just have to allow it to.
Yeah, and remove the barriers. And the barriers aren't always just physical.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Bethany. So
You're
grateful
welcome.
for you and what you do, and honored to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Wellness Loud production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To check out more shows by my team, go to wellnessloud.com, and to email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.
Are you ready to rock middle age? I'm Dr. Tina Moore, Gen X truth teller and holistic physician. On the Dr. Tina Show, one of Apple Podcast's top alternative health shows, I share what actually works for metabolic health, hormones, and strength, backed by decades of clinical results, not trends. From loving the gym and hitting your protein goals to peptides and microdosing GLP-1s, it's all done the right way, not the hype way. Because menopause doesn't have to suck if you're fit. New episodes every Thursday, produced by Drake Peterson and Wellness Loud.